Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm John Becker, and we're going to set the table for our discussion on the Tennessee legislature. It wrapped up, and just to remind you who's in control, firmly in the hands of Republican. This is what's called a walkout majority. That means that the Democrats could literally walk out of the House and Republicans could still pass bills. Let's move to the Senate. We've got a similar situation there. We are pleased to have two veterans of the House with us this morning to talk about what happened in the latest legislative session. To do that, Representative Jeremy Faison of Cosby. It's nice to have you, also a leader in the Republican Party.
Glad to be here. This is exciting.
Yes,
and sit here with my friend Gloria.
Yes, caucus chair next to Representative Gloria Johnson, a Democrat, and both of you have been in the legislature for years, so we appreciate having your perspective this morning.
Well, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Good. Well, let's get to our panel. My colleague John North is here, and next to him, oh my gosh,
in the leopard skin,
Susan.
Ice detention.
Yes,
The legend.
the legend, Susan Richardson Williams, a Republican.
So
nice to have you
happy
back.
to be alive
We
and
are
back.
too. We are so glad you're here. She has her own PR firm, Don Bosch. We're glad you're here as well.
I'm happy with that, yes.
A Democrat who runs his own law firm. Well, thank you for being here. And we're going to get to the legislature in just a moment. But first, the hot news of the week really is this ongoing trial of Glenn Cassida and his former assistant, ex-chief of staff, Cade Cothran. Now, if this rings a bell, Glenn Cassida used to be the Tennessee House Speaker until literally he was run out. And now he's facing, if he's convicted, 20 years behind bars, and so is his former assistant. This is for moving money in places they shouldn't. That's the short of it. Gloria, you've been watching this trial. What has stood out to you? You were there 3 days this week.
Yeah, well, you know, earlier, the first indicted person, I think, was Robin Smith, and she pled, and so she's assisting the government with their case, and so she is giving all the facts of what happened and what they did from her side. And it's quite remarkable to hear about it, to hear the web of lies that they weaved, and these intricate lies about in setting up the company, the backstory of the company, and this is what they were telling to their friends and colleagues in the legislature. It's just remarkable to me to see the corruption and how it's interwoven in the legislative body.
Representative Faison, you're a fellow Republican, but you were never a fan of Speaker Cassida. Why?
So, first time I had the chance of voting for was in 2010 when the Republicans took over the legislature. And you'll remember Beth Harwell and him were both running for Speaker. And I openly voted for Beth Harwell that year. I always felt that there was a little bit of a snake oil salesman, if you will. And then as he progressed, and he didn't win that year, and then he became the caucus chair. Then he ran for majority leader, and I remember looking at him when he ran for majority leader, and that would have been in 2016, I think. I said, Glenn, man, I've watched you for 6 years, and I feel like he was on the precipice of a divorce from his wife, and I'm like, man, you don't need to run for anything except run for your family, run for your wife. And that really kind of started the end of any relationship we had when that conversation took place. And then when he ran for Speaker, I was like, there's just no way. No, I told him and several of his friends, I was like, I'm worried that there'll be a scandal. You'll have to resign within a year. Becker had no clue that was actually going to come to fruition. And I literally told him that, and 9 months later, he had to resign.
And we're seeing the consequences play out this week.
Many of us knew it was going to happen.
Well, I think even people from a distance were sort of like, this will be fun to watch. But Gloria, you straightened me out on something that I think people might be interested in. What I have read, unless I've totally missed the point, the dollar amounts that were in play here did not appear significant. We were talking like $50,000, $60,000 in this kind of bogus business that was set up with Cothran kind of being the front, and then they were going to all profit from it. But you're telling me, no, that's not right. It was going to be way more than that.
Yeah, so that's what everybody thinks on the surface, because that's what this case is about, because this case is about our postal accounts that all of us get. And because it was an off election year, there wasn't a campaign happening. That was the only access to doing mail they could do for people's postal accounts, and that's very limited amount of money. But the whole point of getting those postal accounts and doing that mail piece as constituent outreach was so they would become clients when it came campaign and caucus time, because the campaign mail and the caucus mail is millions. And so getting those early things when it was not election year was getting them out there and letting folks know they were in the business so that they could get that big stuff later, and they did.
This trial is going to play out over the next few weeks. Again, we just wanted to brief you because both of them have a connection to it, you being there and you also being in the legislature at the time. Let's move to the latest legislative session. I'm going to start with this question and then we'll get these guys in the next block. But Representative Faison, what was the most important piece of legislation that passed this year?
Well, I would say a lot of times the most important things you do is make sure certain bills die. We shouldn't be in the business of passing a whole lot of bills. And you'll find this shocking. Gloria and I probably agreed on several bills that were actually horrible. And it's important that some bills die. Outside of bills dying, we can get into that if you want to. Which one specifically? I see things that are important is we brought more funding for public education. I noticed that Gloria tweeted yesterday or today that we're the
47.
lowest. Yeah. It's embarrassing. We're hoping by 2026 that we will be far from that. It's embarrassing because for the first 150, 200 years of Tennessee, the Democrats kind of ran it and they've never funded education. So since Governor Haslam took over, we have been every year add more. And we've literally in the last 8 years doubled the budget. We're trying to catch up from what they had done. No offense, Gloria. So we're getting there. So in my opinion, probably funding that is one of the most important things we did. We did some good stuff on crime, and but thankfully this year here's the deal. We don't actually have to pass any bills for Tennessee to still be a good place. So I think killing some bills that were really bad this year were just as important as passing any good bills we passed.
We'll get into those specifics, but Representative Johnson, what do you think is the most important bill that passed this year?
Well, I can't really say that there was one. I mean, important and bad would be the vouchers.
Okay.
And what he's talking about, this money that's going to be going into education, Democrats fully funded public education. It costs more now, so you're spending more now. But to say, you can't pretend like you're putting a lot of money in education when you're 47th in the country
some pretty good
in
years
per
that are never
pupil
at the
funding.
border.
I mean, that means we're not doing enough. We're not keeping up with the cost of living. Tennessee teachers are still making less than they did 10 years ago when you take into effect cost of living. That's a fact.
Let's get into the specifics after a short break. We've got to take one right here on Inside Tennessee. Back with our questions again. Welcome back to SRW. She'll leave us off. Back on Inside Tennessee, Susan Richardson-Williams, your question to our lawmakers.
Well, one of those bad bills that I know Gloria would deem a bad bill, was giving Tennessee public schools the right to refuse enrollment to children without legal immigration status or charge them tuition. That bill died or didn't pass. Is it put off for next year or is it dead? It's dead.
But
Gloria,
they said they're going to bring it back.
It probably will come back. Jeremy, where were you on that bill?
Oh, I was a big fat no. And I let him real quick know that. I remember the song we sang as kids, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. And the notion of using a child for a political opportunity for me it's just really narrow-minded. And I said at one point, I was like, there's literally nobody in my district that ever said, Jeremy, we think you should tell children that aren't here, their parents came here illegal, they ought not be able to go to school. You know, another thing I thought was interesting is all the police chiefs and all the sheriffs, they would come and like, please don't pass this bill. There's no other state in America who thought about this. We knew the Supreme Court wouldn't even take it. I talked to our Attorney General. He's like, Jeremy, there's no way the Supreme Court would take this. For me, it just felt like some sort of political stunt, and I didn't want to be a part of that because at the bare minimum, we need to love our kids.
You were in the
teach our
minority.
kids. I was, yes, ma'am.
In our party.
Yeah, there were Republicans that were against it, but that's because it was so heinous and ugly just on its face.
Clearly unconstitutional.
It was,
just like Jeremy
and
suggested.
they discussed.
It was not going to go
the
anywhere.
sponsors of the bill said it was unconstitutional, and their point in bringing it was to make that challenge. And I'm like, I get that we're frustrated with immigration situation, but you know what? Let's get folks up there in D.C. to write policy. mass deportation is not policy. Let's go write a policy. You guys have a majority everywhere, pass it, and create that path. But why? Because your folks won't get up there and do the hard work of writing policy. Why are you going after kids?
So, Gloria, John always loves to point out the supermajority aspect of the legislature. Every show
Makes
that
us
we
very happy.
have one on, and one day our day will come back. But if in the magic world of maybe the Democrats having a bit more influence, what's the one thing? Give it time, everything comes around, and you know that.
Oh, I
Jeremy.
know.
Y'all heard it
The
here.
pendulum swings. The
You
pendulum
heard it
swings.
here.
It may
What's the
swing
one
faster
thing
these
that you
days.
really wished you could get some consensus from the Republicans and get passed? There's got to be one thing that really matters.
Healthcare.
Always Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
But then also, voters this past year were loud and clear before this election. They wanted relief on their grocery prices. They wanted relief in costs at home. We did nothing in this
And
budget
there
for that.
was a little
Nothing.
early traction about the grocery tax. What do you
Yeah.
think happened?
Absolutely. Well, they know it's popular, so they start thinking about it or maybe presenting their own bill, but their bill didn't pay for it. The Democrats' bill paid for it. And so it was a responsible way to remove that sales tax off of groceries. We also, our budget is 39, we have backlogged $39 billion with a B dollars of road projects. We've got to get to work here figuring out how we're going to keep up in this state. And unfortunately, there's nothing in that budget for Tennessee families.
Let's talk about that and give you a chance to respond to the grocery tax. Why didn't your party pass just an all-out end to it?
So we actually did pass something that we could, and allows all the local government to take off their portion of the sales tax if they want to do that, which I think is allows the local control on that. But we also understand that we have things that we have to pay for. The lion's share of the budget that nobody wants to talk about 94% of the budget, is already set in stone. It's not a partisan thing at all. It's just all of our different agencies. It's what it costs to run this state. We've got roughly 50,000 state employees with all these different agencies. We have to do that. We're only a sales tax state. That's how we get our money here. I don't know if you realize this, but we're the lowest tax state in all of America. Probably why there's so many people retiring here. So you can't have everything all at once the way you want it like that. I think you will see next year there's a good chance that we're going to come at the sales tax for food that are healthy, organic food, something like that. To do away completely with all the sales tax at groceries, that's not fiscally
Jeremy,
responsible.
We could have done it. We could have done it last year when they gave that $2 billion tax break to corporations, most of them being outside of Tennessee.
I just wonder,
that would
though,
have paid for it.
in terms of revenues for the state of Tennessee, they have been trending flat, and the time to have done it was a few years
Right.
ago. Next year doesn't look better. This year doesn't look good. Next year doesn't look any better.
The Biden economy destroyed us. If your president hadn't been such a horrible president, Gloria, we'd probably have more money.
It's actually the best economy it's been in many years.
It is
Oh, my
our
gosh, inflation was
governor
terrible.
and this legislature who has continued to cut taxes for the wealthy, which means
when we cut
within
taxes, it's
2
for
years.
everybody.
No.
Everybody
in
with
2
money.
years, we are not going to be able to meet our budget.
Jeremy,
and
quick
this
question.
governor's going to be gone, and he's not concerned about it. But
to
we've
Gloria's
got
point,
problems coming up.
Medicare for all expansion, doing better, that's not money coming from the state. That's money coming from the feds that we paid in. Where are you at on that? And that would be something, a service we could provide. Where are you at on that?
So I sat down and talked with the director of TennCare, and I asked him, I said, how much are we paying for uncompensated care in Tennessee? Which is huge. You ask any of your CEOs, hospitals, it's huge. So I have, it scares me, the thought of a single payer system. I think there's evidence that you can see single payer systems
But we're not
don't
talking
work.
about single payer system.
Medicaid expansion.
You're talking about
But that's
Medicaid, not Medicare.
Medicaid, I'm
But I
sorry.
will say this. Republicans aren't getting it right when it comes to health care. I like what Governor Haslam did. Governor Haslam presented to the legislature that you had to have some skin in the game, that you had to get on some type of healthy regimen, that you had to have some copay to it. If we can get there, and I personally sat down with Governor Lee and said, before you get out of here, and while Trump's there, can you work with HHS, see if there's a way that we can do what Governor Haslam was trying to do? I'm all for it. But what we don't want is just people who are being lazy. The people who can't work, man, I'm all for them getting help. They're getting help. You'll find out if you expand Medicaid, there's a lot of cats.
They're not
no,
getting help.
Listen, here's the deal. The truth is, it's typically white guys from the age 22 to 44. The vast majority, when you expand Medicaid, that's who it's going to cover. I asked the director of TennCare, who's the population? If we can get to a place that you have skin in the game, I'm all for it. We will save money for
Nobody has more
Tennessee.
skin in the game than these poor folks in Tennessee who have no access to health care. All the
But they
skin
could pay
is in the
$10.
game.
They could pay
Sometimes they
$10
can't,
for a
Jeremy.
copay. Yeah, if you can buy cigarettes and Coke and Mountain Dew, you go to. They're buying Mountain Dew like crazy. You can pay $10 to go to the
Again,
doctor.
stereotypes.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more of our discussion, talk about infrastructure. You brought it up, and I want to hear from a man who lives in a place where they desperately need more help right after this. Back on Inside Tennessee with two representatives, one Democrat, one Republican. Representative Johnson brought this up, Representative Faison, and that is the need for more infrastructure, a $39 billion backlog. Your county was hit particularly hard, Greene and Cocke counties, by Hurricane Helene. How would you rate the response from the state in your counties in rebuilding the infrastructure?
So Tennessee, we got it right. As a matter of fact, this morning I was on I-40 in Tennessee and in North Carolina. I went up to Max Patch to do some work over there this morning. And we are so much more advanced. We immediately, like on Saturday after the hurricane, which was on Thursday, TDOT was already working. I got heavily involved in my whole area. Ended up working with people from Pigeon Forge on helicopters, taking stuff into North Carolina, and I was amazed at how horrible the response was there. When it comes to what she said, us being $39 billion in arrears to our infrastructure, that's a situation, and the costs are ever rising. But we're a pay-as-you-go state. We don't bond our roads. Our roads are still really pretty amazing. Do we need more? Absolutely. Governor Haslam raised the gas tax right before he left. That hasn't hit it. We're going to have to do some sort of user fee to get our roads where we need to be. That's just the truth.
I don't think I'm misquoting Becky Duncan Massey, who we're going to see next week, saying we do need to look at some alternative funding. We have got to accept that pay-as-you-go is not the forever model.
No, it's not working. And because of all of the rising cost, it's not possible for us to continue to build roads. And right now, if you have a good idea and you think you can do something, it's on a 20-year plan because of where we're at. We as a state need to come together and realize, you know what, guys, we're going to have to pay to travel.
Are choice lanes a viable answer for that, where people it's a pay-as-you-go?
I went to 2 different states to look at it, and Becker, I was actually impressed. I went and spent a couple days in Texas looking at it. The governor flew a few of us down there. It costs $5 when you're coming from Galveston to get into Dallas, and you get there 30 minutes quicker. Me personally, I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to do that. Well, when you do that, you get off the road that everybody else who doesn't want to pay $5. Yes.
That's why they call them Lexus lanes.
Is it all? Is it going to fix everything? No, but it is a user-friendly thing that somebody who's willing to pay that, they can choose and they can do it.
But the money not going to come to us. It's going to go to businesses, corporations.
Well, a portion of it will come to us, and who cares as long as people are getting where they're going. To me, that's immaterial where the money goes.
Well, you said it was going to help road projects. It's not going to help build some of these road projects.
There'll be a small percentage of it. A small percentage will come back to the state, but somebody's got to build that, and they're willing to go on the hook with their money up front to build a choice lane and be willing to finance that. The state of Tennessee is not going to be able to finance $2 billion to do a choice lane through Knoxville, but there's companies who will. So we're thankful they're willing to take that risk. And you drive through Knoxville at 5:30, coming from Farragut to here.
Now.
We need it.
You want it.
Susan, we got 2 minutes.
I just wanted to bring up there was $50 million given to help build an SMR with TVA and over in the Clinton River side. There was small modular reactors, SMR, and some $10 million to go in workforce development for nuclear. Another $10 million for the Nuclear Energy Fund. Clearly, this is a priority of the governors. I know it's something you're interested in, Jeremy. Talk about that, and are we getting there? Are we becoming the nuclear state?
Susan, just briefly, I know we got to get going, but I will say this. TVA, in their effort to use clean energy, has shut down a lot of are usable energy makers.
You're talking about coal plants.
Right. It's so bad that we have to buy energy from other states who are making energy with coal, and then it's costing a fortune for our people in Tennessee. So when it comes to these SMRs, I am very excited because talking to the TVA, they're telling me that the one on the Clinch River they're building will literally power this entire region, and it's clean, it's effective, and it's cheaper than the rest. So this is an exciting time for Tennessee, and we're hoping to see 6 total throughout the state of Tennessee.
But it's a concern with what's going on at the federal level. You know, that's going to potentially...
The regulation and monitoring of,
exactly.
of these
It's
facilities
potentially
become critical.
going to make it very difficult here for those projects to go on.
There's not another alternative, in my opinion.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a bad
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying...
It's a state problem, but what do we do
It's a
if the
federal
feds
issue.
abandon their oversight, which they've always had oversight on nuclear power? They abandon that. Tennessee's not able to pick that up.
So what I will tell you is the people in general are not okay with abandoning oversight. They want to make sure where they live, where they drink, where they play is safe. I promise you, when you're hearing the fear-mongering coming from the left on that's going to abandon this, that's not going to happen because we're not going to have fish with 6 eyes and children with 3 arms. It's simply not going to happen, guys. We're going to make sure it's taken care of.
It's happening. I'm talking to the scientists in the field, in our streams,
But y'all believe in all
and
kind of weird
rivers
stuff.
right
Your
now.
science is always junk
This is-
science, so you got to
It's
be
not
careful.
my
Science is
scientist.
always junk science.
It's a scientist
Well, you
who's
think a dude can be a girl? That's your science, Gloria.
It's
Come
a
on.
scientist that's been working in East Tennessee in our rivers and streams and in our forests for 20 years, and they know exactly what's happening.
We're going to have to leave it there. More to come on Inside Tennessee. Representative Faison, we appreciate your perspective. Representative Johnson, always good to see you as well. Thank you both, and
Absolutely.
we're back right after the break. Back on Inside Tennessee, your impressions of the House work this session, Don?
Pretty quiet. There's not a lot of controversy. Obviously, the vouchers has been controversial for years, and that really was the only major hotspot. The other thing I noticed, we didn't have the drama that we had from the session before with the Justins and Gloria, the Tennessee Three, and while there were moments, and a lot of times the public may not have seen those moments, there were moments, but it was a little calmer session, and while the Democrats are still being largely disrespected and largely by our speaker, it was just a bit better.
I think my impression was they tried to do a lot of things to sort of mimic Trump agenda. There was DEI, some bills about DEI, and there was this bills about immigration and a lot of that. So I think there was a good bit of that happened this session.
Not much of it got through.
No, not a lot of it got through, but there was a lot of talk about it.
Well, the thing about teaching kids about marriage and having children, that got through.
Right.
I'm surprised that there wasn't more discussion about that. I think maybe if that had sort of come along earlier in the session, there might have been a sort of a bigger stink about that.
Well, and there was that DEI bill did get through too about, having to not being able to have that in public schools, universities, and so forth, not having those offices. So that did pass.
They're just sort of renaming some of them now to hopefully fly under the radar.
Some of that was already there, or just.
We'll continue this conversation with 2 senators who join us next week on Inside Tennessee. We'll talk about that side of the business in Nashville. Again, that's next Sunday right here on Inside Tennessee. Great to have you back, SRW, and we'll see you next week.